and welcome to our webinar today on how to create employee communication and collaboration parity in a hybrid world. We wanted to explore this subject in today's session because we've been hearing more and more from our clients about the new challenges that hybrid working are actually bringing to their organisations, particularly in creating employee experiences that neither disadvantage employees, whether they're working at home, whether they're working in the office, or indeed whether they're working from anywhere. So let's introduce your speakers for today. My name is Mark Elwood and I'm the Marketing Director here at Teleware. And today I am joined by Al Cumberworth. Hi, Al.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me. Al Cumberworth, I'm the Microsoft Unified Communication Specialist here at Bytes. Been working with Microsoft for the past 13 years on large-scale desktop transformation projects, primarily focused around voice, but also working with the third-party ISVs like our good friends at Teleware, and obviously other ISVs partners as well.
Thanks, Al, and thanks for joining me today. I'm sure we're going to have a really interesting discussion about this subject because I know it's kind of affecting lots of people that we're working with. So before I move on, it's probably worth me explaining a bit more about Teleware for those of you who are less familiar with us. Teleware, we're a Bytes partner and we're also a Microsoft Gold partner in multiple disciplines. And we've been working in communications for over 30 years now. During that time, and for the last several years, I would say, we've been helping businesses enable flexible working and hybrid working in lots of different contexts. But since the pandemic, what we've been finding is that firms are now looking at how best to enable hybrid working for not just a few employees, but most employees or even all of their employees. And that requires the use of different technologies and different practices than they employed in a pre-pandemic model. So that's some of the things that we're going to be talking to you about today. Before we do that, it's worth explaining some of the clients that we work with at Teleware. They are some of the biggest and most well-known brands in the UK and beyond, but also working with smaller businesses as well. And I would say that the thing that kind of brings all of those together and the common thread that runs across all the customers that we work with is that appetite for outstanding communications and outstanding collaboration across their respective organizations. So getting into the subject matter at hand, what is hybrid working? Well, it's very different from home working when you're employing it across your entire employee base. And I think during the pandemic, people got used to working from home. But as we started to kind of incorporate more office working, then it means that you're bringing multiple challenges and multiple locations into the mix. But what ultimately it brings is freedom for employees to work in a flexible and mobile way, regardless of their location. And it means that they can optimize their productivity and their work-life balance, ultimately creating a much healthier life for them. But there's also wins for them, for an employer as well. Ultimately, they're going to have happier, more engaged workforces. They're going to be more productive. And ultimately, that could become a really attractive tool to attract and retain the best talent, which in a very competitive employment landscape is really important for all organizations to really get their heads around. So Bytes recently conducted a survey of 122 professionals in the UK around their attitudes towards hybrid working. And one of the key standout facts that I got from this survey was that a massive 81% of employees are saying that they want some form of hybrid working as we move forward from here. And I think that that is really indicative of the market today and the fact that employers are really having to get their head around this about how they actually roll hybrid working out to their entire employee base. Al, having a look at those stats there, does that kind of make you feel anything? Does that kind of tie in with your experiences? Tell me about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people having a lot more work-life balance and more flexibility is always a good thing. And being able to been in the office, people waking up at 8 o'clock and being in the office at 8 o'clock when they're at home has led to a greater increase in productivity, and that work lifestyle balance. So it completely makes sense that people want to continue that on. But also, we see people people do want to go back into an office or be in an environment where they can be with their colleagues maybe once or twice a week and have that balance. And that's very much when I'm talking to CIOs and CTOs, that's where they're trying to get to with their overall strategy.
Yeah, and I think some of the anecdotal kind of information that's coming back to me is the fact that pre-pandemic, there were several kind of employers who deemed certain jobs or certain activities as having to be done in the office. But then obviously that option was taken away from them, and jobs and people were working at home in a way that was probably deemed impossible or not practical prior to the pandemic. And then we've managed to kind of make that work in some way, shape or form. So I think from an employee's perspective, there's that, well, we've done it, we've proven that we can do it. And therefore the expectation might be going forward that, well, why wouldn't we kind of do that in a hybrid way as we move forward? So I think that's created a very different landscape to where we were in 2019.
Absolutely agreed. And I think at the center of that, obviously, Microsoft Teams, as we've seen, when we first went into our first lockdown, the amount of customers that I was working with that were looking at deploying Teams maybe 6 to 12 months out, and obviously hit that big red panic button. And we've seen how successful Teams been enabling that, that hybrid, well, the home working and then hybrid working as well. And we're looking at daily active users shot from 145 million to 235 million, within a matter of months. So it's really been a great enabler from that side.
Yeah, it's incredible. So we've touched on the fact that hybrid working is different from having everybody home working, but let's delve into that a little bit more. Can you just tell me, Al, from your perspective, well, what are the main differences between home working and hybrid working for your employee base, and what are some of those challenges that brings to employers in trying to make hybrid working work effectively?
Yeah, I mean it's a vast subject matter, and you have different conversations with different people every single day on it. But I think we think about some of the common themes about home working. It's definitely, as I said before, allow people to become far more productive, but it doesn't come without its challenges. We're seeing people suffering from burnout from just being on constant back-to-back video calls. We're seeing the demand for people being on video calls increasing, which is one of the big things around burnout and fatigue. We're starting to see lots of advice come out around that about best practices. But working from home, and especially if you've got families at home, through school holidays and things like that, can be massively challenging. Not only from a perspective of internet connectivity, you've got maybe your kids streaming Netflix or on the Xbox, and that can have impact on you're on a customer call, for example, video quality degradation, maybe voice degradation, things like that. But one of the biggest issues I've seen is organizations not providing sufficient working from home setups. And that comes down to everything from your environment. So from your desk, where your monitor is, how your feet are positioned, what your seat and your posture is like, right down to various other mental health and well-being, and how do you ensure that maybe people who are sat in a high-rise block of flats that are sat in that 5 days a week and don't really get a chance to get out much, the impact on people's mental health. So all of these become an integral part of how do you support this hybrid working, what are the best practices about it. And that's it's going back into the office as well. What do you do around things like hot desking, car parking spaces, social distancing, making sure people have the right type of endpoint for going back into the office. Like myself, I've been just using my laptop audio, and moving back into the office, I need to ensure that I have a decent noise cancelling headset when I'm around other people. So putting in tools to be able to cope with that. Looking at things like the Microsoft Stack and Power Platform has been a great enabler in how to overcome that and achieve those type of automated processes where people can book in to desks and make sure their colleagues that they want to be with and spend time with are sat close to them. So things like that are incredibly important to factor in.
Thanks, Al. And I think a lot of your focus there was around people, which is great. It's great to hear that, not just from a working practices perspective, but also in terms of mental health and so on, which is an incredibly important subject matter. But thinking about employee experience. I know, as somebody who's worked in a hybrid way for probably 15 years now, when I've been working at home during much of that time, I was often at a disadvantage because I was kind of outside of what was happening in the office. There could be a meeting room full of people, and I'm on the end of a conference line, which often puts me at a disadvantage and therefore not creating parity. So, but that's not going to be acceptable as we kind of move out of a pandemic and as we move into a true hybrid model kind of way of working. So what does it mean from an employee experience perspective, and how can employers start to kind of really get their heads around that?
Yeah, I think into sort of a bullet point format, it's what's integral, and obviously when I'm working with my customers and obviously joint customers as well with Teleware, in the preparation of planning out, rolling out Teams and maybe Teams voice and video endpoints, then headsets and everything else. It all comes around ensuring that end-to-end communication experience is as good as it can be. Now, there's lots of different ways of achieving that, which I know we'll touch on in a short while. But ensuring the elements around network quality of service and quality experience from an end user perspective, is massively important. And then looking at things like chatbots and having that interaction with the employee while they're working at home to make them feel as included, or inclusivity, is a big word that's been bandied around a lot, but it does help with people. And also, from a HR perspective, it helps HR understand if somebody needs a bit of attention, that can be then escalated to line management, that can then be, things put in place to mitigate against, those type of issues from people burning out or fatigue, or, feeling that sat at home all the time and it's not conducive to their mental well-being, right down to things like meeting etiquette. When we've got people sat around a board table, what's the etiquette in that room when there's people sat at home, or people even in a car that's joined by audio. You've got 2 or 3 people having sideline conversations while the main speaker is there. It's going to become really hard for those people remotely to kind of hear clearly what that person's saying. So there's little bits like that, I think, Mark, are incredibly important.
Okay, well, thanks for that. So let's talk about the communication and collaboration experience in a little bit more detail, and the types of technologies that are available that we can look at, and people should be perhaps looking at to enable that, to create that employee parity, regardless of where they are. So what can firms be doing to ensure that all employees can contribute equally, regardless of where they are?
Yeah, it's a really hard one, because again, when you come down to kind of the whole video experience, it's really good to have that when you're having a meeting and there's people sat in the office and then other people in different locations, and the whole idea of working from anywhere. But it is ensuring that you have the best possible experience. So it's all preparation, again, whether it's you sat in a meeting room, whether it's you're driving in a car, for example, you should have a noise cancelling headset and not be using your Bluetooth, because again, you've got things like background noise and interference. So it's again ensuring that the employees have got the right technology for their job roles. And there again, when we're talking to customers, it's a lot around persona mapping, so understanding your employees' environment, where they're going to be, and then giving them the right tools to do the jobs. And then right back down to looking at end-to-end, or what we now classify as ear-to-ear monitoring. So ensuring that your IT department, if there is an issue, can then diagnose, troubleshoot, and remediate that issue as soon as possible. So having tooling which is out there that allows you to get that granular vision of what is, or seeing what's going on from the various different points that the end-to-end communications take place is again really important.
Yeah, and so one of the other things that comes up from time to time, Al, is that certain businesses who perhaps working in more regulated markets kind of have slightly different requirements. But if everybody's using Teams, what are the capabilities around kind of recording and being able to audit kind of these increasingly virtual communications that are taking place on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point, Mark, because I think when you're talking around things like compliance, and recording, across all modalities, it's traditionally been most of the kit sat on premise. Then how do you get people who are working from home to ensure that they're meeting those regulations? So, and what we see today is everything is now SaaS based. So you have the technology out there to be able to do compliant recording for things like FCA regulations, MiFID II regulations, and again, this is supporting working from anywhere. So no matter whether you're at home, whether you're on holiday, wherever you are having those communications taking place, that all of that technology can still be utilized regardless of location. So there's all of those things to take into consideration as well, and obviously scope that into the solution that you're looking at moving forward.
Okay, so you talk quite broadly about kind of some of the technologies that are available there. I don't think we'd be doing our jobs though if we didn't talk a bit more specifically about what we can provide as a Teleware and Bytes partnership. So kind of, in terms of what a typical kind of hybrid solution might look like for that, what types of things do we provide to our respective customers to enable them around hybrid?
So yeah, I mean, really quickly. So that is everything from enabling Teams and voice, depending which route you want to go down. It doesn't really matter. That's all supported by our joint partnership. Whether it's looking at contact center, going from something as simple as a service desk right through to full blown omni contact center, where you've got different mediums of communications, helping with that customer experience. Again, all completely cloud-based, regardless of where customers are, right through to, and I can't stress, I always go on about change management and adoption. Again, fundamentally important to make sure that when you are rolling out new technologies, that you are communicating it out to the organization in a way that it has a positive impact around the change that's coming down. And then again, we look across the entire 365 stack. So it's not just about Teams voice, it's about, well, what impact around endpoint security comes into play around this in to make sure that your employees are having the best possible experience, B, that the organization knows exactly if there's any faults, they can resolve them very quickly. C, again, empowering every employee to become productive, but at the same time, making sure that the front of mind, that their wellness and mental health is looked after as well. So there's all of those elements that are taken into consideration when we're working with our customers to design in solutions that's going to be, supporting them for the next 5 to 10 years as they transition from, potentially what might be E3 to E5 and moving more workloads from on-premise into the cloud.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Al. So I think that it's great that we've got you here as a Microsoft solution specialist and kind of with loads of experience around this whole hybrid working subject matter. I'm sure there are going to be people listening today who will, prior to this conversation, might have been thinking, well, it's okay, we're already doing hybrid working. So we've got people working from home and people working from the office and so on. But actually doing hybrid working and doing hybrid working well are two very different things. So if I'm kind of looking to elevate kind of the hybrid working model that I've adopted within my organization, are there any kind of hints or tips that you would give to anybody listening today to say, do these things and that will put you on a good footing for having a really effective hybrid working model?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, it's always got to be around the employees and the employees' well-being, ensuring that they do have the right tools to do their jobs regardless of location, and factoring all of that in. Like I said about the persona mapping, it's incredibly important. But also when you are looking at, sort of big transitional organizational wide changes, that you work with subject matter experts, so like Microsoft certified architects, change management practitioners, because these people, this is what they do day in, day out, and they can give you great advice and experience from, other projects and other companies they've been working on. And then thinking about what happens in your business, is how you can automate things. So like booking car parking spaces, building entry systems, so you don't have to have people there anymore. The ability to book meeting rooms, and even like pre-ordering meals at lunchtime to save time. So there's not 30, 40 people in the cafeteria. So there's all these little areas that they need to be taken into consideration.
Brilliant. Well, thank you for that. Hopefully our audience today kind of got some value out of that. But if anybody would like to find out any more information, Al's contact details are here on the screen. al.cumbleworth@bytes.co.uk. You can visit the Teleware website at teleware.com. And yeah, if you would like to have a further follow-up conversation, do get in touch. We'd be delighted to hear from you. And I'd like to wrap up by thanking you today, Al. It's been great having this conversation with you.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
Always a pleasure. And to everybody who's tuned in today, thank you very much, and hope to see you all soon.